Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. The Bank of Korea has yet again decided to keep its key interest rate at 3.5%, citing the heated housing market and rising household debt as the main reasons. It also lowered the country's economic growth forecast to 2.4%. Democratic Vice Presidential candidate and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is speaking and formally accepting the nomination on night 3 of the U.S. Democratic National Convention on Wednesday. Former President Donald Trump held his first outdoor rally since an assassination attempt on him, now this time behind bulletproof glass. Ukraine's incursion into Russian territory intensifies, with Ukraine reportedly having struck Moscow in one of the largest drone attacks since the war began. As widely expected, Seoul's central bank has announced it is keeping its benchmark interest rate steady for the 13th session in a row at 3.5%. Skyrocketing home prices and household debt were partly behind the decision to hold off rate cuts. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
The Bank of Korea has held its benchmark interest rate steady at 3.5%. The decision was announced on Thursday following the second Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the second half of the year.
We have unanimously decided that it would be appropriate to maintain our current monetary tightening stance while inflation is slowing, because we need to monitor the impact that real estate policies and global risk aversion will have on financial stability.
This is the 13th time in a row that the BOK has decided to freeze the rate, its longest rate freeze streak. The base rate was last raised in January 2023 to the current 3.5% and has been left steady since then. The rate freeze decision this month comes despite inflation remaining in the 2% range for 4 months straight. Recent data shows that the country's consumer price index, a key gauge of inflation, rose 2.6% in July compared to the same month the year before. This is higher than it was in June, though, when consumer prices rose by 2.4%, the lowest since July 2023. There are also ongoing concerns about growing household debt and housing prices. Data released by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday showed that the country's balance of household credit, an indicator of household debt, came to more than $1.4 trillion in the April to June period. That's the highest on record on a quarterly basis. Mortgage loans led the increase, surging by nearly $12 billion compared to the previous quarter. This comes as home prices in Seoul went up by 0.76% compared to the previous month in July, the largest rise seen since December 2019, according to Korea Real Estate Board. The BOK's decision was also influenced by the U.S. Central Bank in its most recent meeting deciding to keep interest rates unchanged, as it's unlikely that the BOK will cut interest rates ahead of the United States, with the current interest rate gap at its largest ever at 2 percentage points. But as the Fed is widely expected to cut interest rates from as early as September, the Bank of Korea could also cut rates in its next policy meeting in October. Also on Thursday, the BOK lowered its economic growth outlook for this year to 2.4% from the previously forecast 2.5%. And this year's inflation forecast was also lowered from 2.6% to 2.5%. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And the minutes of the Federal Open Market Committee released on Wednesday revealed that a vast majority of members believe it would be appropriate to lower the benchmark interest rate in September. Now, if economic indicators proceed as expected. Lee Seung-jae has more.
From March 2022 to July 2023, the U.S. Federal Reserve raised its key interest rate a total of 11 times. Since then, the benchmark lending rate has remained in the 5.25 to 5.5% range. However, that could change next month with the Federal Open Market Committee set to make its next rate decision. According to minutes of the FOMC from July 30th to 31st, released on Wednesday, the vast majority of members believe it would be appropriate to lower the benchmark interest rate in September if economic indicators proceed as expected. Watchers are anticipating a 50 basis point cut, in line with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Group Fed Watch, which indicated a 39% chance that the U.S. Central Bank would lower the benchmark interest rate by 50 basis points next month. Recent employment figures released by Washington further fuel the prospect of a rate cut next month. According to the U.S. Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics on Wednesday, the U.S. job market is not as hot as initially thought. Data showed that there were 818,000 fewer jobs in March of this year than initially reported. This means that the U.S. job growth from April 2023 to March 2024 was about 30% lower than previously reported, marking the biggest downward revision since 2009. Traditionally, the U.S. Fed cuts rates on poor employment data, with the latest figures putting pressure on policymakers to cut rates. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It's day 3 of the Democratic National Convention, where U.S. Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz is taking center stage with his nomination acceptance speech. He follows former President Bill Clinton and Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, who were there to show support. Our Shin Ha-young has more.
The U.S. Democratic National Convention entered its third day on Wednesday in Chicago, a day after Kamala Harris was endorsed as the next presidential candidate in a ceremonial roll call. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate, is delivering his acceptance speech, introducing himself to American voters, as well as outlining his political vision. This comes 2 weeks after Harris picked Walz as her running mate, calling him the vice president America deserves. A campaign official said he has quickly gained momentum nationwide. Walz has a military background with the U.S. Army National Guard and experience as a high school teacher and football coach. Also on Wednesday, former President Bill Clinton addressed the Democratic National Convention. He began by thanking President Joe Biden for his service to the country, saying that Biden's decision to step aside from the re-election race would enhance his legacy. Clinton also described Harris as someone who works to solve problems, seize opportunities, and ease fears, ensuring that Americans have the chance to chase their dreams. Following Clinton's speech, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took the stage. Also on Wednesday, Republican candidate and former President Donald Trump held his first outdoor rally since an assassination attempt against him last month. He addressed supporters in North Carolina standing behind bulletproof glass. Trump emphasized that once he takes office, he will restore America to maximum strength and return the world to peace, adding that he can achieve this with just a telephone call. Meanwhile, ABC News has reported that independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is considering dropping out of the presidential race this week and is expected to endorse Trump. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The White House has announced that U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed on Wednesday the urgent need for a ceasefire in Gaza. It also said Vice President Kamala Harris joined the phone call, and that President Biden noted the urgent need for a finalized agreement on the release of hostages. The two leaders also discussed how the U.S. is helping Israel defend itself against threats from Iran and its allied groups. Meanwhile, talks to negotiate a Gaza ceasefire are resuming soon in Cairo, with Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. involved in mediating the deal. Russia says that its air defenses shot down a total of 45 Ukrainian drones overnight, now 11 of which were over the Moscow area. The attack comes as Ukraine continues its incursion in the Kursk region. Yun-jin reports.
Russia's defense ministry said its air defenses repelled a total of 45 drones in Russian territory on Wednesday, including 11 over the Moscow region, 23 over the border region of Bryansk, and 6 over the Belgorod region. Russian authorities, as well as the mayor of Moscow, called it among the most significant attacks on Moscow by Ukrainian drones since the start of the war in February 2022. According to the acting governor of the Bryansk region, no injuries or major damage was reported in the Moscow or Bryansk regions, but in the Kursk region, 1 woman was killed and 2 other people hospitalized. Ukraine previously targeted Russia's capital in July 2023 when drones struck 2 non-residential buildings, and a second time in November 2023 when Moscow was reported to have stopped more than 20 drones. The overnight drone attacks came as Ukrainian forces continued to push into Russia's western Kursk region. Ukraine's strike on 3 key bridges in the last week has trapped Russian forces, as well as crippling their logistical capabilities. Russia subsequently built at least 3 pontoon bridges across the Sime River, but at least one of those is confirmed to have been destroyed by a Ukrainian drone on Wednesday. While stretched thin, Ukrainian forces are moving towards the goal of its land incursion into the Kursk region, which Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said is to create a buffer zone as well as weaken the Russian military. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to claim that the Ukrainian attacks are acts of terrorism.
The same way we fought with terrorists previously, now we fight with those who commit crimes in the Kursk region, Donbass and Novorossiya. But the same way we achieved our goals in the fight against terrorism, we will achieve our goals in the fight against neo-Nazism. And we will certainly punish the criminals. There can be no doubt about that.
And going on with business as usual, Putin welcomed Chinese Premier Li Qiang to Moscow on Wednesday, praising the close economic and trade relations between the two countries, while there was no indication of whether the ongoing war with Ukraine was discussed. 이은진, Arirang News.
The meeting between the ruling People Power Party Chairman Han Dong-un and the main opposition Democratic Party Chairman Lee Jae-myung, which had been scheduled for this Sunday, has been postponed, as he has tested positive for COVID-19. The rival parties announced a change in plans on Thursday, following the DP's request for postponement and PPP's agreement. Both sides are working on rescheduling the meeting, which is now expected to take place after Lee's full recovery. The meeting will be the first official talks between the two as party leaders. Coronavirus has been going around this summer, but seeing this as a part of the endemic process, the government reassured the public that it can be managed within the current response system. In fact, the number of infection cases is showing a downward trend this week compared to a week ago. Choi Soo-hyung has more.
The current COVID-19 surge in South Korea is expected to continue until the end of August. In a Wednesday briefing, the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency predicted that this summer's resurgence will peak later this month before decreasing.
This summer's COVID-19 surge is expected to peak at the end of August and be similar in scale to last year's.
The agency added that the reasons for this COVID-19 surge include the fact that last winter's outbreak was not very severe and the COVID-19 vaccination rate has been relatively low. However, the KDCA also stated that the current management system is sufficient to handle the situation.
The current situation should be seen as part of the process of COVID-19 becoming endemic, not as a crisis like the pandemic from 2020 to 2022.
According to the agency, the number of COVID-19 inpatients from 220 hospitals nationwide dramatically increased from 226 in the third week of July to 1,366 in the second week of this month. However, the agency emphasized that the cumulative fatality rate from January 2020 to August 2023 was 0.1% and is similar to that of seasonal flu. It has ensured a stable supply of treatments and test kits to protect high-risk groups such as the elderly and in case of a potential uptick in cases. The KDCA has announced that treatments for about 180,000 people will be distributed by the 26th. These supplies are planned to last for high-risk groups until October, after which they'll be provided more steadily through the general healthcare system. Around 3.25 million test kits are expected to be supplied. The Ministry of Health and Welfare recently said that effective vaccines against the current variants will be supplied starting in October, urging people to follow personal hygiene measures. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And amid the ongoing heat wave in South Korea this summer, around 3,000 cases of heat-related illnesses have been reported as of Tuesday, with 28 deaths. The weather authorities said that during the monitoring period from May 20th, the number of illnesses has increased by about 460 compared to last year due to the heat wave, with daytime temperatures well over 30 degrees Celsius nationwide. The Ministry of Interior and Safety urged people to avoid outdoor activities during the hottest hours between 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. and to drink enough water to prevent dehydration. South Korea's fuel tax cuts will be extended through October as fears grow over a wider regional conflict over in the Middle East. Our Moon Hae-ryun tells us more.
The South Korean government is extending fuel tax cuts until the end of October as global oil prices surge with mounting tensions in the Middle East. That's according to Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok during an economic meeting on Wednesday.
Volatile global oil prices due to the recent escalating tensions in the Middle East to place a burden on people's livelihoods. As a result, the government will be extending the fuel tax cut for 2 months until the end of October.
Currently, the tax on gasoline is levied at 656 Korean won per litre, with a tax rate cut of 20% applied. For diesel, it's 407 won per litre, down by 30%. Back in July 2022, the government expanded the fuel tax cut rate to 37% for gasoline and diesel in an attempt to stabilize consumer prices before reducing the rate in steps. This is the 11th time that the government has extended the fuel tax cuts, as they were due to expire at the end of this month. Global oil prices have been prone to fluctuations in recent days, with uncertainties in how the conflict between Israel and Iran will play out. On Wednesday, oil prices slipped as mediators from Egypt and Qatar, as well as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, pushed for a ceasefire agreement. However, the market is volatile, with oil prices rising for 5 straight sessions due to positive U.S. economic data a week before. Stabilizing domestic consumer prices is a key reason behind the extension of the fuel tax reduction measures. Last month, oil prices at home rose 8.4% year-on-year as the government lowered the fuel tax cut rate. This is the highest increase seen since October 2022. Initially, the government expected revenue from traffic, energy and environment taxes to reach 15.3 trillion won this year, or around $11.5 billion, which is up by more than 40% than last year. Due to the extension of the oil tax reduction measures, tax revenue could be lower than expected. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Goto International High School, which consists of a large number of Korean Japanese students, has advanced to the Japanese High School Baseball Championship Finals for the first time ever. Now, commonly known as the Summer Koshien, the school rallied back to defeat Aomori Yamada High School 3-2 in the semifinals on Wednesday. Goto International High School has won all 5 games it played in this year's tournament en route to the final. And some 30% of the school's students' population is of Korean descent. It'll face off against Ganto Daiichi High School on Friday for the championship.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today with updates on the luxury yacht that sank off the Italian coast of Sicily on Monday, with 4 bodies retrieved from the wreckage by rescue divers on Wednesday. The Italian Coast Guard has not yet formally identified the bodies, but rescuers have been searching for 4 British and 2 American nationals, including Mike Lynch and his daughter, alongside chairman of Morgan Stanley Bank International, Jonathan Bloomer, and his wife. The Bayesian, a 56-meter luxury yacht owned by Lynch's wife, was carrying 10 crew and 12 passengers when it sank, with only 15 survivors from a total of 22 on board. Those on board were reportedly guests of Mike Lynch, founder of the software company Autonomy, who had gathered to celebrate his acquittal in a US fraud case. The Bayesian was anchored 700 meters off the port of Porticello when it was hit by a suspected ferocious pre-dawn tornado over the water, also known as a watersprout, and sank. The body of the vessel's cook was recovered on Monday. Social media influencer Andrew Tate was held overnight by Romanian police on Wednesday over a new set of allegations, including trafficking and sex with a minor, money laundering, and attempting to influence witnesses. Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan were taken in for questioning by Romania's Serious Crime Agency, Gov't, and remanded in custody for 24 hours as investigators searched their properties for evidence. Tate, who has a massive following on social media, was already awaiting trial for charges of rape and human trafficking, both of which the brothers have denied. According to Govt's statement, 4 houses were searched on Wednesday morning in Romania's capital Bucharest and in Ilfov County. The Tate brothers are former kickboxers of dual UK-US citizenship who are accused of exploiting women involved in their adult content business. The Tates were first detained in Romania in December 2022 and released from house arrest in August 2023. In India, at least 17 people have been killed and 41 injured in a blast at a pharmaceuticals manufacturing plant in Andhra Pradesh state in the south of the country. The explosion occurred at the pharma company Essentia Advanced Sciences manufacturing unit, which spans over 40 acres in the Achutapuram Special Economic Zone. District officials said they suspect an electricity-related fire. The local police superintendent said that while rescue operations are underway, the death toll is likely to go up. Local media reported that bodies of several workers were feared to be trapped under the rubble, while the force of the explosion launched severed body parts of some workers across the factory grounds. Essentia manufactures intermediate chemicals and active pharmaceutical ingredients. The state government has ordered an inquiry into the incident. Now finally to Spain, where world's oldest person, American-born Spaniard Maria Brañas, died on Tuesday, aged 117. Born in San Francisco on March 4, 1907, before her family returned to Spain, Brañas attributed her long life to avoiding toxic people. She was named the oldest known person in the world by the Gerontology Research Group after the death of French nun Lucille Randon last year. Brañas lived through the 1936-39 Spanish Civil War and two pandemics, the 1918 Spanish flu and the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. The Gerontology Research Group said that Japan's Tomiko Itooka, who is 116 years old, is the next oldest person alive, becoming the candidate for the Guinness World Records World's Oldest Person title. Brañas' family said that she is in her sleep, at peace and without pain. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It's Choseol today, the second autumn seasonal term. But the long-awaited so-called Choseol magic is not going to happen this year. Statistically, weather turns towards autumn at this time, but Korea remains in the grip of an intense heat wave. Also, those in the east should notice a huge jump in highs this afternoon, topping out at 36 degrees Celsius in Gangneung. Meanwhile, sunshine will turn darker with showers this afternoon. Expect to see 5 to 60 millimeters of showers, heavier rain in the northern parts of Korea. Dropping mercury to the low 30s, but feels like temperatures stay a couple of degrees higher. Seoul and Chuncheon should get up to 31 degrees, Gwangju topping out at 32 degrees Celsius. It feels like we are in the middle of summer, but I'm sure many of you can tell the autumn is well underway, with sunsets getting earlier each day. But it is going to take another week or so for it to feel like autumn. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.